John's account of Peter following Jesus into the courtyard reveals more than a moment of fear. It uncovers the contrast between the confidence of the flesh and the steady accomplishment of redemption through Christ alone. While Jesus moved willingly toward the cross, Peter struggled with uncertainty, distance, and self preservation. Yet, even in Peter's weakness, the faithfulness of Christ remained unchanged. John 18:15-18 describes two disciples following behind after Jesus was arrested. One disciple, known by the high priest, gained access to the courtyard and brought Peter inside. Peter entered physically, but emotionally and spiritually, he lingered at a distance. This scene illustrates the tension between human devotion and divine accomplishment. Peter genuinely loved Jesus, but love rooted in human resolve could not withstand the pressure of fear. The servant girl's question in verse 17 appears simple. Are you not also one of this man's disciples? Peter immediately answered, I am not. This denial came before physical torture or legal threat. The pressure of association alone exposed the instability of self-confidence. Earlier, Peter had declared that he would lay down his life for Jesus, but now he could not even acknowledge knowing him in front of servants. The passage demonstrates that righteousness and faithfulness are not secured through human consistency. If salvation rested upon the strength of human loyalty, Peter's failure would have disqualified him immediately. Instead, the narrative points to the greater faithfulness of Christ, who remained steadfast while his disciples scattered. Jesus did not go to the cross because his followers proved worthy. He went to the cross knowing they were weak. The fire in verse 18 becomes symbolically important. The servants and officers stood around coals of fire because it was cold, and Peter stood among them warming himself. The one who had walked with Jesus now found temporary comfort among those opposing him. John intentionally contrasts Peter standing beside the fire with Jesus standing before judgment. One sought self-preservation. The other surrendered himself for the salvation of the world. This moment also reveals the end of confidence in the Old Covenant system centered on human performance. Peter represents devoted yet fragile humanity under pressure. The arrest of Jesus marked the approaching end of the age governed by temple-centered religion, earthly priesthood, and covenantal separation. Within that generation, the temple itself would fall, confirming the completion of the transition into the new covenant reality established through Christ's death, resurrection, and enthronement. Caiaphas and the priestly system appeared powerful in this scene, but their authority was already fading. The true high priest stood bound before them. The earthly structures of the old age were preparing to judge the very one who would bring their era to completion. Peter's fear occurred within a world that was passing away. Jesus stood firm because he was inaugurating a kingdom that could never be shaken. Peter's denial, therefore, becomes more than a personal failure story. It is a revelation that humanity cannot sustain itself through zeal, promises, or religious dedication. Only Christ remains faithful enough to secure redemption. Later restoration would come to Peter not because Peter proved his worth, but because Jesus completed the work on his behalf. The passage also speaks to believers who struggle with inconsistency and weakness. John does not hide Peter's failure because the gospel is not built upon the greatness of disciples, but upon the finished work of Christ. The security of the believer rests not in unwavering personal devotion, but in the unwavering obedience of Jesus himself. Even while Peter denied him, Jesus continued toward the cross for Peter's sake. That is the glory revealed in this passage. Human weakness could not stop divine grace, and the failure of the disciple could not overturn the purpose of the Savior.